So, what happens when power gets too high on caffeine and forgets to read the manual? You get ICE raids without warrants, National Guard parachuting into LA like it's a Marvel movie, and a former president shouting "Liberate Los Angeles," like he's leading a medieval crusade. Welcome to the spectacular, wonderfully chaotic world of arrogant policies, where consultation is optional and consequences are someone else's problem. In this city, the rules are more like suggestions, and the people in charge seem to think democracy is just a setting you can toggle on and off. You get ICE officers raiding donut shops and Home Depots without warrants, National Guard troops rolling into LA like it's a Marvel movie, and a former president yelling "Liberate Los Angeles," like he's auditioning for a history reboot. It's the kind of political theater that would be hilarious if it weren't so real, and so disruptive to the lives of everyday people just trying to get by. Welcome to the wild world of arrogant policy, where consultation is optional, and consequences are always someone else's problem. Let's break it down. Because in LA, when the stakes get high, the playbook gets thrown out the window, and the city becomes a stage for power struggles that ripple far beyond city limits. Early June 2025, ICE decided that immigrant workers at warehouses and donut shops were now national security threats. No warning, no explanation, just a sudden shift that turned ordinary workplaces into targets. The city's immigrant communities, already living with uncertainty, suddenly found themselves at the center of a federal crackdown that felt more like a show of force than a pursuit of justice. Between 70 and 118 people got swept up. No warrants, no IDs, just officers in masks rounding up families like it's a dystopian TV pilot. The fear was palpable, spreading through neighborhoods like wildfire. Parents disappeared from jobs, kids waited at school for rides that never came, and entire communities were left wondering who might be next. The city had just declared itself a sanctuary, but apparently that memo didn't make it to federal headquarters. The disconnect between local and federal authorities was glaring, and the people caught in the middle paid the price. It was a collision of ideals and egos with real lives hanging in the balance. Who did this hit hardest? The people who make LA run, immigrants, workers, families who call this city home. The ones who keep the lights on, the food coming, and the city moving, but who suddenly found themselves treated like enemies in their own neighborhoods. Oh, just your average hard-working immigrant trying to earn a living, their families, and eventually everyone who had to breathe tear gas when the protests erupted. The fear and anger didn't stay contained. It spilled out into the streets, uniting people from all walks of life in a shared sense of outrage and urgency. Thousands took to the streets, blocking freeways, chanting in front of courthouses. The city pulsed with energy and defiance as people demanded answers and accountability. It was a moment when LA's famous diversity became its strength, as communities came together to push back against what they saw as an attack on their rights and their city. What started as peaceful protests turned into riot scenes with rubber bullets flying and tear gas flowing like it was Coachella, but for chaos. The line between order and disorder blurred, and the city's streets became a battleground, not just for policy, but for the soul of LA itself. He parachuted in 5,000 National Guard troops. Overriding California's governor like federalism was just a suggestion. Because, federalism is cute, but raw power is cuter. The sight of military vehicles rolling down Sunset Boulevard was surreal, a reminder that in times of crisis, the balance between state and federal power can tip in unexpected and unsettling ways. Suddenly, Louisiana wasn't just the city of angels, it was the city of armored vehicles and lawsuits. Result? The legal system kicked into overdrive, with lawyers filing injunctions and civil rights groups mobilizing to challenge the crackdown. The city's reputation as a beacon of progress and inclusion was put to the test. LA, a city prepping for the 2028 Olympics, is now a global symbol of both diversity and militarized unrest. The world watched as the city that once promised hope and opportunity became a cautionary tale about what happens when power goes unchecked and communities are pushed to the brink. International headlines called it a war zone. Disinformation spread like wildfire. Trust in leadership? That's probably somewhere out in the desert. What's the lesson here? All of this feeds into the classic recipe of division. Power versus people, federal versus state, justice versus just vibes. And in the chaos, it's the most vulnerable who pay the highest price. Arrogant policy doesn't ask, it dictates. It's the kind of leadership that confuses authority with wisdom, and force with effectiveness. When leaders stop listening, the people stop trusting. and the system starts to crack. It's allergic to nuance, hostile to dialogue, and it thrives in chaos. The louder the conflict, the more it feeds. And while politicians argue and agencies clash, it's the people on the ground who are left to pick up the pieces. Lawsuits fly, public trust tanks, and democracy, well, sometimes it feels optional, because apparently prisons are too mainstream now. Instead, we get a city on edge, a government at war with itself, and a public wondering if anyone is really in charge. If this mess made you think, or just made you mad, smash that like button, drop a comment, and maybe subscribe before they raid YouTube next. Because in times like these, staying informed and speaking out is more important than ever. Stay safe, stay informed, and remember, real leadership doesn't skip steps, and it never forgets who it's supposed to serve. In the end, democracy isn't just a word, it's a responsibility, and it's up to all of us to make sure it's never optional.